My friends, it's that time again to turn to our great friend Bob Kudla from Trade Genius, but more importantly, tradewithlionel.com, or call 800-949-1408. We'll explain that later. But Bob, since we last spoke, fill us in. Anything new going on since we last talked? Anything different?
It's funny. I just got back from almost a month in Asia, and there's an old Chinese saying, "Say, may you live in interesting times." And I think we are. In fact, sliding into China, that's the big macro event right now. So, we have. I think the big thing over the next 3 to 5 years is going to be the great China United States decoupling. And so,
what does that mean?
The trade between us will collapse. Our technical standards and their technical standards are going to diverge, and we're going to have a situation where there's really going to be two worlds out there. You're going to have the United States-led standards and trade, and then you're going to have the Chinese-led standards and trade. And so we're going to be going through some sort of non-kinetic war between us until the leverage that we have on either side is done. And so, the leverage that we have over China is that they're imitators and stealers of IP, and they're going to have to start to innovate if they want to survive. And for us, we're going to have to start picking up the pace on onshoring manufacturing and some of the things that we didn't want to do around rare earth and pharmaceuticals and some of the dirtier manufacturing is going to have to come back on shore. And Trump's been pretty clear about wanting to do all that. And in the meantime, there's going to be some bumps and bruises along the way, and some of them are going to be unknowable, but it's going to be really interesting to see. My personal view is that China is in big trouble, and if you notice, demographically they have a problem. They also, their banking system is essentially, they're all the fiat-based banking systems are bankrupt, but China is such a world of hurt that they have basically $5 trillion of non-performing loans, and they have $3 trillion of equity. So the country is essentially bankrupt. Germany has the same problem, by the way, whereas if all those loans had to be called, the banking systems can't absorb it. And that basically means 60% GDP wiped out in your country. And that's been my view all along, that China's GDP has been inflated by almost 2 to 1. And they're not nearly as big as everybody claims to be, because all they did was just pump debt into the system, but they pumped it into non-performing assets. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out. And you also have allies realigning themselves. So, you have the United States now. Trump actually, he's doing a master class in geopolitics, right? So what he's doing is he's shortening his areas of risk, right? So he's calming down the Middle East. He's basically isolating Iran. Okay, his next area of interest is going to be getting Ukraine and Russia to stop killing each other, and also then to drag Russia back into the European orbit from the Asian orbit. And then he's going to spend 100% of his time then on how he's going to isolate and cause basically bringing China back into the, what is it? You get just get on the ladder and knock out the teenage kid. So China's too big for its britches, and is causing angst, amongst the allies we have in Asia. And so that's the plan. We'll see how it plays out. Here in the United States, we're slowly going into a recession, if you notice, and it's really going to be a matter of, can the reshoring overwhelm the losses we're going to get in AI, and also just basically as our population ages, we don't spend as much money. You and I are in that category of people where, we don't need much anymore, right? We're not out there buying, whole new, furniture sets for the house, and we're not acquiring a new home. Most people, now we're into experiences versus material needs, and that causes pressure on our economic base too. So that's kind of where we are, and then obviously, Trump's fighting a domestic battle here too. He's basically trying to defund the left, basically isolate the left, and that has its own set of issues. This thing with the government shutdown is that this might be the biggest game theory situation that we're going to have. Trump's going to continue to try to put the screws, to the Democrats in terms of the spending in their districts. At the same time, at some point, if the Democrats don't fold, either the filibuster gets blown up, or we may have a government that's run on half the income, which should be interesting to see. And good news is, if it can happen, and the country doesn't miss the spending, then Democrats are screwed forever. However, if it bites too hard, people have very little tolerance for pain. You already see people hand wringing now. This spending and that spending being cut out. It could cause us to go into a deep recession next year. So really interesting times on that stock market. Between now and probably end of January, with maybe a few little bumps and bruises, it's just going to keep grinding. There's just too much cash flowing in to the United States from around the world, and there's the analysts have been underestimating the growth of our economy, and at least in terms of growth of companies' abilities to generate cash flow, and so they're going to keep pushing this market up. We can get a blow off, or we already had the blow off, and we're just going to grind. But going into next February, and there's an interesting cycle that says basically 2026 is a top in the market for 7 years. And so you have this. I should send this to you. It'd be a really good one for you to talk about. This thing's been it's 120 years that this cycle has been observed, and has a really, really high confidence rate in terms of like 80% correct in terms of picking these tops and bottoms. And in between that, there's some minor ups and downs, but you're looking at a 26 top, 28 bottom, a 30 minor top, a 33 bottom. So basically what we're saying here is, just like in 2007, 2008, it took 5 years or 6 years for it to get back to where it was before. And I think we're going to see the same thing. You can't have a stock market growing faster than GDP like it has been without it then retrenching into either it doesn't go anywhere, or you get a pretty good sell-off.
How have the tariffs worked so far heretofore?
They came out of the gate perfect. Companies are trying to pass on the price increases, but they're having very little luck. People are getting an economics lesson right now in terms of the sensitivity of price to demand. I don't know what you got a jurisprudence degree, but if you took any economics classes in college, that's one of the big things that is discussed. A lot of people just think, it's pretty funny. I came from a technology company, and our CEO came from the defense industry, and so he thought you could just cost plus pricing. And we've had to gently explain to him that people don't have to buy your product at that price. Right.
Exactly.
And so I think what we're seeing now is whenever they try to push pricing through on the tariffs, the demand falls off, and so you're starting to see demand shrinking as prices rise, and so you get an opposite effect. Like Walmart is trying to is trying to undercut Amazon in the food area. And then you have, rents now with, the illegal migration basically reversing, is that a lot of rental properties are opening back up again. We're starting to see actually prices fall here in California in the rental markets. And then Trump with the drug prices, with his, Trump RX and best pricing in the world legislation that he's enacted, is that you're going to see probably medical costs flatten out. And what that's going to mean is that we'll probably get a little bit of a deflationary scare here. And obviously, if this government shutdown goes on, we're not borrowing any more money. So we can definitely dip into deflation here. China is already in deflation. Europe is going into deflation too. So I think people are going to go from the debasement camp, which that's why gold and silver have been ripping, to like an, oh my God, we're going into the deflation scenario. And it could trigger very, very fast.
Now, how does this play for investors, and what should they do now based upon the situation? What is your advice? What do you forecast?
Well, if you would have talked to me a month ago, I would have said to stay in gold and silver and Bitcoin, but they played themselves out. Bitcoin is struggling over the last week to 10 days. That's a little bit of a tell on global liquidity. Okay, that's a canary in the coal mine. Crypto leads a lot of times the trend because it's more Wild West. There's less bumpers on it. Like the U.S. stock market has a lot of options and ways in which you can kind of take the edges off a move. But Bitcoin's a little more raw, and it's basically been struggling here of late. Gold and silver have just been going straight up, but if you buy it now, you're basically buying a top here, short term. Technology is at a top, and what's happening here is that you're getting a shrinking, what's called breadth. Less and less stocks are making them indexes go higher. This is my long way of saying is buy bonds. TLT
Right.
Is where you want to probably put your money, and there's some short ETFs out there now that you should start. I'm not saying go 100% that way, but you need to, between now and the end of the year, you need to be positioning yourself. We're going to have a cutting cycle all the way through 2026. Trump's going to get rid of Powell. He's going to put in a monetary softy in there, and we're going to just see see interest rates collapse. Okay, and TLT will be a beneficiary of that, and you're going to see gold and silver probably pull back a little bit, and Bitcoin's going to pull back some more. Tech's going to pull back. And maybe there's probably a play in the not the discretionary, but the staples. Those are the products that you kind of have to buy every day. So there's a ETF out there called XLP, which is something people should take a look at. And there's a short crypto one out there called SARK. And none of these are leveraged, so you can stay in them for a while. You got to stay away from the leverage ETFs. So that's kind of what my mantra is to people listening to me. And then, obviously if you're day trading or week trading, our algorithm's finding those trades every day. But if you look
Now,
at
that's the
macro,
thing right now. Right now, somebody is saying, Bob, you're terrific. I've listened to you. You're fantastic. I don't understand a single thing you said. I just want to get involved in this, and I want to know more about this. I want to pick that brain of yours. I want to get into that method. How does one work, and how does your incredible service, which, by the way, people love, how do they get in? What do they do?
well, you could just go, go through your landing page, Trade with Lionel. You sign up for, we basically have a beginner and an advanced program. And so you can either be in a chat room or a voice room with us. And then what we do is I put trades out every day, and we measure those trades every day too, so that there's accountability there. So a lot of people just take the trades that I put out, and then in addition to that, we have rooms where you can ask questions. And then the other thing that we do that probably nobody else does, we give you access to our algorithm, so that you can just go on TradingView, load the algorithm, and you can look for your own trades. So those are the ways we can help you. And then also you could do coaching with us, and then we have seminars occasionally as well. So you don't really have to know anything. All that yakking I just said, you don't have to know any of that really to get started. You can
No, I
just
love
take
the yakking. I love it. I'd love to know more about it because it's fascinating. And let me just remind people, you're not a Trump cheerleader or a Trump deflator or a defeatist. You're reading the tea leaves. Whatever they give you, you act accordingly. You are there to respond, to act accordingly to what the market, to what the systems reflect, to what the algorithm tells you. I just make sure, because sometimes people say, "Is this some pro-Trump thing?" No. In fact, if something changes, you change. Like John Maynard Keynes said, when the facts change, I change my opinion. Let's make sure we understand that, because that's how you work, and that's why you're so successful.
Yeah, I'm a pro wallet guy. My wallet. So yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I lean that way. So I like what Trump's doing. You know, I don't always like the way he says it, but I love what he does, and it needs to happen. He in fact is doing the only thing that the United States can do to survive. So we're going down a path of utter destruction. I don't think people quite understand that. You know, we were totally compromised as a nation. The people that were running our country were in it for themselves short term, and we were rapidly becoming a vassal country to China and to Europe. And Trump blew that up, and the American people were just in a fog. They didn't realize, you know, we're day to day. We're a big country. We don't. United States, ironically, is not an outward-looking country. You know, we're very inward-looking, and so they're always fighting to get people interested in what's going on outside our borders. And so I think Trump has woken everybody up. And the only other thing he can do is onshore as much as possible. We are going to go into a Great Depression 2.0, but ironically, the United States is going to, just like Britain got through the Great Depression 1.0 with no real issues, we're going to go through it with no real issues, Great Depression 2.0. I don't want to be China. I don't want to be Germany. I think Japan and Korea are in trouble, but because they're such close allies of the United States, he's not going to let them fall off a cliff. You know, but any country that's really trying to be mercantilistic, just like what happened to the United States in after World War One, going into the Great Depression, is that those countries that have big trade surpluses, that big account surpluses, are going to get their heads handed to them. And China has a double problem because they don't have the resources internally to feed themselves and energize themselves. And they can have massive unemployment if basically everybody starts cutting them off. So that's kind of where we are, you know, and I think Trump's doing the right thing. But, you know, there's a lot of, you know, you basically told the children they have a curfew. And so, you know, you're getting a big fight right now.
Well, Bob Kudla, as always, if anybody's interested, go to tradewithlionel.com, tradewithlionel.com, or call 1-800-949-1408. Tell them you saw Lionel and Bob. Ask for the deal, whatever the specialties are, because people have loved it. I've received such great praise from people thanking me, because unlike others, you don't have to jump in and say, good luck. You can jump in at any level, and depending upon how deep you want to go, you will always have your hand held, algorithms to lead you, and depending upon your depth of interest or degree of interest or participation, you will accommodate it accordingly. It's you set the parameters. That's what makes you great. Plus, it's clear. And like you said, you don't sell stocks. You don't sell. You're not CNBC. You're talking about this is the reality. This is what we do. This, you always post your trades. This is what we do. That's it. You're not pushing anything. You're different than a lot of folks. You're a completely different Megillah, so to speak, as it were. Let's make sure people understand that. Any final words, any clarifications, Bob?
No, I think next month, if you want, I can actually share my screen and show you how it works. Because usually you and I talk during the trading hours, so I could flash the algorithm up for people so they could see it actually in action.
The next time, guaranteed, let's do that because I want to know more about this and people do as well. And again, tradewithlionel.com. Jump in, see for yourself. Don't hesitate. It's always the right time to jump. You don't wait for the crest or the valleys or whatever the particular phrase is. Now is the best time. Bob Kudla, tradewithlionel.com, 800-949-1408. Make sure you saw Bob and Lionel together. And my friend, always a pleasure. Thank you for illuminating us. Thank you for making us smarter and richer and wiser, good friend.
No, thank you. And then I'll talk to you before Thanksgiving next month.
Wow, I can't believe we've been saying that. Anyway, we will do that. All the best, my friend. Thank you so much. Bob Kudla.
Okay.
Indeed, sir.